They weren't ruined by drugs, lawsuits, or creative burnout. What nearly killed the Rolling Stones was paperwork. In 1967, they were global icons, but by 1971, they were broke, betrayed, and exiled. The culprit? 5 words that would haunt them for decades. It seemed like a good deal. This is the story of how an accountant from New Jersey nearly destroyed rock's greatest band, how the Stones lost control of their most iconic songs, and the desperate gamble that saved their careers. It's 1965, and the Rolling Stones are riding high on their first massive hit, I Can't Get No Satisfaction. Despite selling millions of records, the money flowing into their bank accounts seems suspiciously thin. Their US record deal pays them only 15% royalty rate, far less than what other major artists were earning. Enter Alan Klein, a scrappy Newark accountant raised in an orphanage after his mother died when he was 4. Klein won them over with brash promises, lavish dinners, and quick cash, seeming like their savior against the industry establishment. His pitch was simple. The record companies are screwing you, and I can get your money back. For the working-class Stones, Klein's approach seemed perfect. He was like us, Keith Richards would later recall. He wasn't one of those British showbiz types with the phony accents. He was real, and he promised to get us what we deserved. When the Stones' first manager, Andrew Loog Oldham, brought Klein in to handle their finances in 1965, Klein immediately impressed the band by securing a new deal that boosted their royalty rate to 25%. He found money they didn't know they were owed and delivered checks that made their eyes widen. Money was suddenly appearing from places we'd never seen it before, Richards remembered. It was like magic. But magic always comes with a price, and the Stones would soon discover they had made a deal with the devil. The young Stones were musicians focused on creating art, not deciphering the fine print of complex contracts. The deal that would haunt them hinged on a corporate structure Klein set up that fundamentally changed their relationship with their own music. Instead of the Rolling Stones directly owning their music and receiving royalties from the record label, Klein's company, ABKCO, Alan and Betty Klein Company, would control the rights to their recordings. ABKCO would then manufacture records, distribute them to retailers, and pay royalties to the Stones. In essence, the band became employees of Klein's company rather than owners of their own music. The arrangement was structured through buy-sell agreements. Under these contracts, Klein's ABKCO would buy the Stones' recording rights and then sell the resulting products, paying the band their share after taking a substantial cut. This setup wasn't totally unusual for the time, but what made Klein's approach particularly problematic was the level of control he maintained and the lack of transparency about exactly how much money was coming in and going out. Klein wanted a hold on us, on our futures, Mick Jagger would later say. The deal encompassed the majority of their recordings between 1965 and 1970, a period that produced some of their most iconic work: Paint It Black, Ruby Tuesday, Jumpin' Jack Flash, and albums like Aftermath, Beggar's Banquet, and Let It Bleed. These weren't just any songs. They were the foundation of the Stones' legacy. The young Stones, none older than their mid-20s, signed the agreements without fully understanding the long-term implications. It was the price of an education, Keith Richards would later reflect ruefully. But the true cost of that education would prove far steeper than they could have imagined. By 1970, the contradiction was stark. The Rolling Stones were bigger than ever, yet their finances were in shambles. Despite global fame, their cash dried up, royalties withheld, tours unfunded, and a 93% tax bill looming. They were rock royalty on paper but nearly bankrupt in reality. Jagger later alleged Klein had planted a $1.25 million advance directly into his own account, a claim that would become a central point in their lawsuit. But the Stones weren't entirely blameless. Their own lavish spending combined with Klein's financial mismanagement created a perfect storm. The most devastating blow came from Klein's failure to pay the band's UK taxes for 5 years. This wasn't just an oversight, it was catastrophic. With Britain's top tax rate for high earners at a staggering 93%, this negligence left the Stones facing potential bankruptcy. Klein had structured their business in a way that left them personally liable for these taxes, while he maintained control of their assets through ABKCO. As the truth about their financial situation became clear, the Stones made a decisive break with Klein in 1970. But ending the relationship was only the beginning of their problems. Klein still controlled their recordings through ABKCO, and the band still faced the massive tax bill he had allowed to accumulate. With British tax authorities closing in, the Stones made a drastic decision. They would leave England entirely. In 1971, they relocated to the south of France, not for pleasure, but for financial survival. "We didn't go to France for the weather," Richards would later quip. "We went because we were broke, plain and simple." While many fans romanticize this period as a hedonistic adventure on the French Riviera, the reality was far more desperate, and the band was preparing to fight back. In 1972, the Rolling Stones filed a lawsuit seeking $29 million in damages from Alan Klein. The legal complaint alleged fraud, breach of fiduciary duty, and misrepresentation. They sued Klein for millions, uncovering his shell game of companies designed to obscure financial flows, but would ultimately settle in 1984, losing control of their 1960s masters for a fraction of their worth. At the heart of the lawsuit was Klein's control of Nanker Felga, the American production company that handled the Stones' US business. The band claimed Klein had deceived them about how this company operated, using it to maintain control over their finances while limiting their access to their own money. The band found themselves fighting on two fronts, against Klein in the courts and against their mounting debts in real life. The lawsuit claimed that Klein had, by false or fraudulent representations, induced the Stones to grant him control over their business affairs and had failed to properly account for royalties. Klein countersued, claiming the Stones were trying to rewrite both history and their agreements. He maintained that everything he had done was spelled out in the contracts they had signed. It wasn't until 1984 that a settlement was finally reached. The terms were far from a complete victory for the Stones. They received approximately $1 million in previously withheld royalties, but ABKCO retained control of the rights to the majority of their recordings from 1965 to 1970. The settlement also required the Stones to provide one final album of new material and gave Klein the right to release any unreleased recordings from that period, including the famed Rock and Roll Circus TV special. The education that Keith Richards had referred to came at an extraordinary cost: the loss of their musical legacy. While their legal team fought Alan Klein in the courts, the Rolling Stones faced the immediate challenge of rebuilding their career while in exile. In the spring of 1971, Keith Richards rented Villa Nelcote, a 16-room mansion in Villefranche-sur-Mer near Nice. With no professional studio available and no money to rent one, the Stones converted Richards' basement into a makeshift recording studio. In a sweaty basement, amid heroin haze and power cuts, they crafted Exile on Main Street, a gritty masterpiece born from desperation. The basement was far from ideal, hot, humid, and poorly ventilated. The electrical system was inadequate, causing frequent power outages. Beyond the technical difficulties, the band was dealing with personal demons. Richards had developed a serious heroin addiction, often disappearing for days or nodding off during recording sessions. Mick Jagger took on most of the business responsibilities, frequently flying to meet with lawyers and financial advisors. "Mick had to become the businessman because I was a complete junkie," Richards later admitted. "Someone had to keep the ship afloat." Despite these challenges, the Stones produced what many consider their masterpiece, Exile on Main Street. The double album, released in 1972, captured the raw, unpolished sound of a band playing together in a basement, creating music that reflected their circumstances, defiant, rootsy, and authentic. Recording sessions would often start in the evening and continue until dawn. Musicians and hangers-on filled the villa, creating a carnival-like atmosphere. But within this chaos, magic happened. Songs like Tumbling Dice, Sweet Virginia, and Shine a Light emerged from the basement sessions, bearing the raw energy of their difficult circumstances. "Looking back, I'm amazed we got anything done," Charlie Watts would later reflect. "But sometimes, when your back is against the wall, that's when the best stuff comes out." Exile on Main Street would eventually be recognized as one of the greatest rock albums ever made, a testament to the Stones' resilience in the face of adversity. The album that nearly didn't happen because of their financial crisis became the cornerstone of their musical rebirth. The Stones lost their early hits to ABKCO, worth an estimated $200 to $300 million, comparable to what Led Zeppelin and Pink Floyd catalogs traded for. But post-1971, Jagger's Savvy built a billion-dollar empire through unprecedented touring success and licensing deals. While the Stones still receive publishing royalties as songwriters, ABKCO controls the lucrative master recording rights to their works from 1965 to 1970, including albums that have sold tens of millions of copies worldwide. When Satisfaction, or Jumpin' Jack Flash, plays on the radio or appears in movies, TV shows, or commercials, ABKCO receives the lion's share of the master recording royalties. The financial impact is staggering. This arrangement is particularly unusual in the music industry. While many artists have fought for control of their master recordings, few major bands have permanently lost ownership of such a significant portion of their catalog, especially during the peak of their creative output. The contrast with their post-1971 catalog is striking. In 2018, the Stones signed a new distribution deal with Universal Music Group for their post-1971 catalog, worth approximately $500 million, suggesting a total value of over $1 billion. Had they maintained ownership of their entire catalog, the combined value would likely be substantially higher. Despite this significant financial loss, the Stones managed to rebuild their empire after breaking with Klein. They formed their own record label, Rolling Stones Records, giving them far greater control over their music and financial affairs. The experience with Klein fundamentally changed how the band approached business. Mick Jagger, in particular, became heavily involved in the group's financial decisions, developing a reputation as one of rock's shrewdest businessmen. When the Beatles were considering hiring Klein in 1969, Jagger warned John Lennon directly, "Doing business with Alan Klein would be the biggest mistake of your life." The Beatles hired him anyway, eventually facing their own legal battles with the manager. Despite the permanent loss of their early master recordings, the Stones have built one of the most successful careers in rock history. Their tours consistently rank among the highest grossing in the world, with their 2005 to 2007 A Bigger Bang tour, earning over $558 million. Yet the shadow of their deal with Klein remains. When classic Stones songs from the 1960s play today, it serves as a reminder of the high price they paid for their education in the music business. The Stones' experience with Klein didn't just change their approach to business, it transformed how the entire music industry operates. After Klein, the band pioneered new approaches to touring that maximized revenue and control. They were among the first to use corporate sponsorships for tours, creating a template that artists still follow today. Their merchandising operation became a model of efficiency and profitability, extending their brand far beyond music. Most importantly, they maintained tight control over their assets. The Stones never again placed their financial fate in a single person's hands. They built a team of advisors, each with specific responsibilities and oversight. Every contract was scrutinized, every deal examined from multiple angles. This approach paid dividends. By the 1980s, the Stones had transformed from financial victims to business innovators. Their 1989 Steel Wheels tour set new standards for profitability in rock touring, grossing over $140 million and establishing the model for modern stadium tours. Their influence extended to younger artists as well. From Bruce Springsteen to Taylor Swift, countless musicians have cited the Stones' cautionary tale as motivation for taking control of their own business affairs. The painful lessons the Stones learned from Klein became valuable education for generations of artists who followed. The Rolling Stones saga with Alan Klein stands as one of music's most cautionary tales, a story of how even the world's biggest rock band could find themselves broke at the height of their fame due to one crooked deal. From their early trust in Klein as an outsider fighting for their interests to the devastating realization that he had structured deals to benefit himself at their expense, the Stones' journey illustrates the darker side of the music business. Their subsequent tax exile, basement recording sessions, and years-long legal battles showcase both the personal toll of financial mismanagement and the remarkable resilience that allowed them to overcome it. Though they permanently lost control of their most iconic early works, songs that continue to generate millions in revenue for Klein's company, rather than the musicians who created them, the Stones emerged from the ordeal as savvier, more businesslike, and ultimately more successful. Their education came at an extraordinary cost, but the lessons they learned helped them build an empire that continues to thrive more than 50 years later. The next time you hear Satisfaction or Jumpin' Jack Flash on the radio, remember, the band that created those timeless hits had to fight for every penny they earned from them and lost that fight in ways that still affect them today. Did you ever sign something without reading the fine print, only to regret it later? Share your experiences in the comments below. Someone else might learn from your mistakes without paying the price you did.